From the funeral to the niggas that say they want office, you better be talking.
Okay, I didn't mean to do that. Welcome to the week 5 news drill of the Manning versus Peterson for MVP Fantasy Football League. The Mahomes versus Jackson for MVP Fantasy Football League on ESPN.com. This is the Fantasy Blitz with your co-commissioners, Will and Tad. Here to bring you another great episode and edition of the Fantasy Blitz through the Gridiron Glory channel on YouTube. But we are the co-commissioners of that league. And we just completed week 5 of said league. And we got a lot of interesting and spicy things, going on so far through 5 weeks of action. So currently right now, let's start with the Jackson division. And I will say that so far, the league and its competitiveness have certainly lived up to just that. It's really nice and refreshing to see, and especially with the buy-in factor being in play, the competitive nature that is transpiring within our league. Everybody is still very much in it. Everybody still very much has a chance for the playoffs. Only the last 2 teams, unfortunately, will not make it into the playoffs. But outside of that, we're very excited to be able to bring you another exciting season of fantasy football. So let's get into it. In the Jackson division, we have New Era, David's team, tied with Sam. Amon Drugs on there. Actually, it's really a 3-way tie for first place right now. 3 and 2 teams, and then no CMC with 2 and 3. My team, only 1 game behind in that regard, though. And then in the Mahomes division, you got Breezy's Pieces tied with Viva La Porta Loca, and then JJ's Gritty Glory coming in 3rd. No Chubb Club in 4th. Currently, the league leader in points is it would appear that it is Breezy's Pieces. Or wait. No, it's David. David is the leader, currently the leader in points. David DeRusse, the defending champion, and then second would become your team, Tad, and then 3rd, Liam. Interestingly enough, though, no CMC has allowed the least amount of points. So I don't know if that ties into a facet of the defense or head coaching. I'm not quite sure how that would, if that is even relevant, but there is that, so so far the leader in the league in trades and moves is Sam's team, who's made 16 moves. So very active with the trading and the free agency there. And then Tad Dorsey, Liam Bald, and then myself. And everyone else has and then David too. He has 8 moves. And everyone else has about 5 or less. So probably the most active moving around player is Sam. And he's on a 2-game winning streak. So a very intriguing fantasy football player there. And I really wish you could see some of these. I really wish you could see these clips or anything like that. If any of you guys happen to know him out there, if Evan, you're watching this and, happen to be able to send Sam the link, please send this in, because I would really like him to see what, the things that we have to say and the things that we have to talk about here in the Mahomes versus Jackson for MVP Fantasy Football League. With that being said, there's a lot of great, exciting things that are taking place. Lots of improvements, lots of trends. Probably so far the most shocking trend would have to be Brees's Pieces. He was projected on draft day as the sixth seed, and he has now moved into a projected first. So in that regard, Brees's Pieces is probably the team, Liam Ball, that has taken off the most and exceeded expectations based on draft day. So shout out to Liam Ball in the fantasy league there. Did you have any thoughts and takes on any of this?
Yeah, I mean, you just see everyone here doing stuff. It's very competitive. Like you said, everyone has a chance. Every team has at least 2 losses and every team has a win. So everyone's doing their thing and staying competitive in the league, which is what we want to see.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it really is, we, want to see, everybody competing to the fullest regard with, everything that we do. So that is very important. Absolutely. So, I'm really happy and I'm really glad to see that, everybody's coming out here and everybody's excited to do it. And that, everybody is just doing their part, to really make this be an exciting thing. Yeah. So there is that. So let's get into the matchups. We'll go ahead and start off with New Era taking on First Picks. And boy, I gotta say, we've had some historic performances in our fantasy football league, but I am extremely impressed with this game and this matchup between the two old buddies, Dallas and David, kind of developing into sort of a rivalry within the fantasy league. And boy, I mean, 354 points and you still get the L. Very tough, very tough. I mean, there's really not anything that Dallas did wrong at all. I mean, if you want to say that he should have started Trevor Lawrence, then I mean, you could probably say that, yeah, he should have started Trevor Lawrence. But then again, I mean, that wouldn't have made that much of a difference between Caleb Williams and Baker Mayfield as well. And I mean, this was just probably a breakout. You had like the breakout performance from Jamar Chase. You had the breakout, well, the kind of somewhat decent performance from Dak Prescott. Kirk Cousins, of course, went out there and put on an absolute show. Just a beautiful all-around performance once again for David's team. And I mean, a beautiful all-around performance for Dallas's team too. But really the biggest thing that probably won David this matchup was the breakout performance by Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, I mean, it came down to Kirk Cousins and Jamar Chase, the top 2 scorers for David side. You got Kirk Cousins breaking the Falcons record for passing yards in the game, so obviously a big time showing there. So just 2 very stacked teams. We're seeing a lot of dynamic teams, so yeah, a very impressive showing. Derrick Henry did just enough. Justin Tucker is still Justin Tucker. I mean, he doesn't always make the longer kicks, but he still helped David's side a bit. So, yeah, a very impressive game, like you said. David, the top scorer this week. Dallas was the 3rd scorer this week, the 3rd highest. So, I mean, he would have won most of the matchups this week as well. So, just a break there for Dallas' side. A lot of impressive things on both sides. Caleb Williams had arguably his best performance, so we're seeing that trend continue to go up, and we'll see how things go as the season progresses.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Once again, a very excited venture for David's team. With Dak Prescott, Bijan Robinson, Derrick Henry, Nico Collins. Nico Collins, though, might be questionable. I want to go ahead and get
Very
your take
questionable.
on the Nico Collins incident, what that could mean for David.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be out for a bit, so that's unfortunate, but he's got enough playmakers on his bench for it. I mean, you can go to guys like Calvin Ridley, Zay Flowers, Jaden Reed if you want to do that. Yeah, there's options. He'll be fine.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so a breakout performance from Kirk Cousins. Congrats to David on the victory here. He now moves to 3-2. Dallas now 3-2. So two very competitive squads, two teams that might even very well could be again in the playoffs. So there you have it. All right, let's go to move on to the next matchup between No CMC and Amon Drugs on the field. Sam's team versus my team. And boy, will my team, me, looked like No CMC had this in the bag. I mean, it was looking really, really good. Up until the very end when Rashid Shaheed decided to break out in a 13-26 loss on Monday Night Football. Really, that was probably what lost the game for No CMC was Rashid Shaheed.
Yeah, a big showing from Rashid Shaheed there, and I mean that is what eventually got Sam's team over the finish line. And another interesting on the No CMC side, I saw that we have CJ Stroud on the bench. Take us through that decision making.
Yeah, so honestly, with CJ Stroud playing Buffalo, I figured with the immense struggles that the Jaguars have been having, I figured Joe Flacco. First of all, you pick up Joe Flacco, you pick him up. You figure he's going to go out there and have a breakout performance. I wasn't expecting 71 points, but I will certainly take it. Even though it was in a loss, it was still very, very fun to watch Mr. Joseph Flacco launch the ball, not against the Broncos.
He's a very elite player still, but I do have to ask specifically, your offensive player Brock Purdy had 19 points compared to CJ Stroud's 42 on the bench. What are your thoughts on that situation?
Yeah, a decision as a fantasy coach and a fantasy owner that you kind of take a roll of the dice on. You figure that Arizona's defense, I honestly thought would have been way more manageable for Brock Purdy to score more points versus DJ Stroud against a very stingy Buffalo defense. Is you play fantasy football long enough, you're in this game long enough, you make decisions like this from time to time, and I guess the biggest thing that I can say is that a 1-point loss nonetheless. And Brock Purdy, he went out there and did absolutely everything that he could to win this football game. He just really didn't have help from his offensive line a whole lot. So, there's only so much that he can do when he's not getting protected and blocked for. So, if you were actually watching the Cardinals and 49ers game, you definitely did notice that quite a bit. Arizona's defensive line was getting after him quite a bit and putting pressure on there. Brock Purdy, as great as he is human. So just one game, and he'll be back to being in the playoffs and in the NFC Championship game again, I'm sure, in no time. Just one regular season loss that he can shake off. I probably would still full-heartedly take Brock Purdy, start him again next week, and I would have full faith that he could win me the game next week. So We just if I'm if I were him and if he were to say if I were to have his mentality as to what he would be saying, like you're interviewing me right now, if I were to say like Brock Purdy, I would just say we just got to go out there next week, and try again, and we just got to shake this one off. So, that's what Brock Purdy would do. That's what I'm going to do. Though I will say the 49ers defense, I mean, of course, has been a very solid defense for me.
For sure.
Really what you should have been questioning me on is why I decided to go with the Raiders coach. I mean, you really should have questioned me on that one. Really, you should have questioned me on that one.
I mean, I was gonna.
I don't even. I'm gonna be honest with you. I guess I didn't have faith in my team the way I should have. Yeah, it just happens time and time again, and you figured that I don't know. I didn't have enough faith in my team, and actually, I'm not even gonna lie. I kind of glossed that over the HC spot. To be completely honest, I kind of glossed it over a little bit. I didn't even put too much thought into it. It was a pretty thoughtless move there, clearly. So, I mean, I put more thought into getting Blake Gilligan because, like, I was going through my lineup and I'm like, okay, I just wanted to make sure that I had a full roster, but I dropped the ball on the HC spot. So that that was probably another big reason. I mean, minus 16 points, you lose by 20 points. And you figure if Brock Purdy maybe scored 4 or 5 more of those points, you win the football game, the fantasy football game. So it's just one or two minor decisions that really could have won this game for no CMC. But nonetheless, I mean, the Bears defense went out there and they played a really good matchup. They played a really good game against a terrible Panthers offense led by Andy Dalton. So that was a shout out to them. Justin Fields, of course. In the loss. So
and definitely some credit to Sam for exploiting the matchup there. I mean, he saw that Carolina was not a very good team and he put the Bears defense out there and he put the Bears coach out there. That's a decision he had to make, and he deserves credit for that.
So a couple of underperforming players perhaps might have been Cortland Sutton, Cade Otton, Chris Olave.
Definitely Olave.
Definitely Chris Olave. I want to go ahead and get your take. Where would you rank Chris Olave amongst starting wide receivers in the NFL?
I mean, he's having a fairly underwhelming year, which is kind of surprising to me. I expected to see a lot more out of him than we have this year. I mean, he's only has 1 touchdown. He hasn't passed 100 yards receiving for a game. I mean, it's hard to rank him as high as I'd want to based on the actual performance. He just hasn't had the year we're expecting. And I mean, we still expect big things out of Chris Olave, but it's just not happened yet to this point. So we'll see if that can improve.
Yeah, no doubt about that for sure. And then, so yeah, shout out to Sam's team for the win. I feel like we've kind of maybe over-talked this specific matchup just a little bit. Liam Bald versus Evan Sturgeon, Breezy's Pieces versus the No Chubb Club, 321 to 284. Liam gets the win there. And when I look at this fantasy football matchup, I think, man, what a performance by the Minnesota Vikings defense.
I mean, they've been showing out all year. They get the defensive touchdown. They intercepted Rodgers 3 times. So that contributed very well to the win. The defense for the Vikings, the coach for the Vikings doubling up there turned out very well for Breezy's Pieces. So big shout out there. Also going with Sam Darnold, so tripling down on the Vikings there. Not the most flashy performance for Darnold stat-wise, but yeah, so triple down there. Big day for Drake London. Big day for DJ Moore.
I want to go ahead and get your take on, Liam Bald, right? One of his starting quarterbacks is Jordan Love, and then the Green Bay Packers starting quarterback, and then the other starting quarterback is the Minnesota Vikings starting quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, he
do you have any
exploited.
specific feelings or takes on that?
Yeah, he exploited the matchup for the Packers against the Rams really well. I mean, we saw what we saw from the Rams defense. They weren't very interested in tackling the receivers, so it's a veteran move by Liam to exploit that, and I mean that was a big decision there. And also, I mean, he's had some concerns with his other quarterbacks being injured and stuff. Like Richardson is out. Justin Herbert's had a bit of an injury and he was on a bye week. So, but in the end, really solid lineup. And I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens next week with Sam Darnold on the bye. So probably go back to Herbert. But yeah, so a really solid, well put together team. Very competitive. George Kittle had a solid day as well.
Yeah.
Good showing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, looking some at Evan's side, the No Chubb Club, I mean, hard not to be disappointed with Patrick Mahomes so far this year, from a fantasy perspective, not putting up the stats you would hope for. Respectable showings from Garrett Wilson, Brandon Ayuk. Obviously the Steelers defense is a high level defense, one of the best in the league.
And I want to go ahead and get your take on Patrick Mahomes and his fairly at best average performance against a fairly at best average Saints team.
Yeah, I mean, he's not having the stats we're used to, especially from a touchdown perspective. I mean, he's had what it looks like 6 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. So, I mean, you'd expect to be a little better.
So what you're saying is that Patrick Mahomes, in this case, might be considered an average quarterback.
And I'd say actually it's 6 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. He's playing like an average quarterback so far this year.
Wait. Just so Tad Dorsey says that Patrick Mahomes is an average quarterback. He knows everything about football. He's the football genius, Tad Dorsey. Tad Dorsey, there you have it. Says Patrick Mahomes is average, and I'm sticking to it.
What I'm saying is he's playing like an average quarterback. My words have been twisted a little bit here, unfortunately. Yes, to combat misinformation here, Patrick Mahomes to this point in the season is playing like an average quarterback. We all know he's better than that. I know he's better than that. He's still a top 5 quarterback in the league, and when he's playing at his best, he's number 1. But to this point this year, we just haven't seen it. I mean, and that's contributing to the struggle of the No Chubb Club. That and Travis Etienne hasn't quite done what we would have expected. So from that perspective, it's just been difficult for No Chubb Club to get the wins they're hoping for early on in the season. Now, you can expect things to turn around for this team potentially. Nick Chubb will be coming back at some point. Jalen Hurts is coming off his bye week, as is Jared Goff. So he'll have more decisions to make at the quarterback. He didn't have a second quarterback this week. He actually started Stephon Diggs in the offensive player spot. So as the season goes on, I'd still expect No Chubb Club to be a competitive team.
I mean, even with the 1-4 record, you still got a lot of season left. You still got a lot of time to work with there. So, definitely don't lose hope if you're the No Chubb Club. Absolutely not. And the reason why is because you're actually getting Nick Chubb, who's actually coming back relatively soon, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he's practicing.
A long-awaited return for Evan's team dating back to last season for Nick Chubb. Yeah. Drafted him again. So he had Nick Chubb last year. Draft him again in the draft this year. So Evan Sturgeon has been very, very patient in getting Nick Chubb back, and I'm pretty sure he's coming back relatively soon.
Yeah, he's practicing again. So I mean, that any day now. Maybe not this week, maybe next week, but
side note for no CMC. it seems that will still be the case for at least until November.
Yeah,
The latest
not
reports
looking
on
good there.
Mr. Christian McCaffrey. And the way Jordan Mason is playing so far this season, that has me pretty worried that, Jordan would probably still get most of the touches. So as far as
Mhm.
myself and other Christian McCaffrey fantasy owners, a lot of question marks there. A lot of question marks.
Yeah,
In your
no,
opinion,
no
is he
doubt
still?
in my mind. When Christian McCaffrey comes back, he'll be the lead back in San Francisco. There's no question there.
So, what is your take so far on a side note on Jordan Mason?
He's filled in very well. He's been a very productive runner. San Francisco's a very good system for running backs to go well. So, he's executed that well. He's not as dynamic as McCaffrey, nobody is, but he's done his job.
Absolutely. And I believe so that's 3 out of the 4 matchups that we've talked about. Now we got JJ's Gritty Glory versus Tad Dorsey.
Mhm.
370 points. And man, I look at this matchup, and despite the fact that it was a loss, what is your take on quarterback Joe Burrow?
Yeah, Joe Burrow has 5 touchdowns. He's waking up. The problems in Cincinnati are not because of the offense; they're because of the defense.
Well,
But
look, I'm sorry. Some problems are on the offense, that being the offensive line. It's not necessarily the skill players like Burrow and Chase and T. Higgins and David Njoku. It's not the skill players. It's the fact that Joe Burrow doesn't necessarily have offensive line protection and or a defense on the flip side of the ball. That's kind of the problems in Cincinnati. But yeah,
Joe Burrow dragged the offense to 38 points. Yeah, like I said, the offense isn't the problem in Cincinnati. The offensive line could use a little work, especially with the injuries. But I mean, the defense gave up 41, and that was the problem. But anyways, like Joe Burrow is playing football at a very high level right now. He's playing like a top quarterback in the league. His 88 fantasy points. I mean, what can you say? That's incredible. I mean, when you can get off to a start like that, that's really good to see from a fantasy perspective. So that it's going to be tough to beat my team when Joe Burrow's doing that. Now he won't do that every week. That's a special performance, but a lot of good consistency that we saw this week. Brock Bowers a big game. The Jets defense did what they could. Um, Mike Evans even just a lot of consistency.
yeah, yeah, no doubt about that for sure. Yeah, so Mike Evans, Brock Bowers, really good performances. Josh Allen. What is your take so far on Josh Allen for your team this year?
Yeah, not a very consistent player this year. He's had a lot of great performances and then some performances that are forgettable. Like against Jacksonville, he looked like one of the best players in the planet. But like 9 out of 30 this week with 1 touchdown, that's you want to see a little better than that, obviously. So we'll see if he can be more consistent. But he's had some great games and he's had some not as great games. So we'll see what we can get out of Josh Allen. I still trust him. I think he'll bounce back fine.
Yeah, yeah, I think he will too. I think Josh Allen's going to have a really good season still. It's still early, still a lot to build off of, still a lot to learn from, especially with a new group of receivers that, he
Yeah.
does have there in Buffalo, still kind of gelling with them a little bit, gelling with that kind of a, um, mixed offensive line, if you will. So, um, yeah, yeah, a really good win for Viva Laporta Loca. Any final thoughts or takes on this matchup?
Um, Lamar Jackson is incredible on JJ's side. JJ Gritty Glory. I mean, that's what you want to see out of your quarterback. It's just a lot of like the other players, they didn't have as big of games as you would have hoped. And
Probably the biggest disappointment was Aaron Rodgers.
Rodgers was disappointing. Aaron Jones getting injured in the game certainly didn't help. But yeah, so he would have expected to have a better performance, but I mean, that's still a fairly solid team as well. We got a lot of good fantasy teams in this league.
Also, Marvin Harrison Jr. Well, all 8 of us are good, right? You know,
Yes,
we're all good teams.
Yeah.
That's what makes it fun. Yeah. But yeah, Marvin Harrison Jr. Fantasy, obviously, you know, very flashy on the field, but fantasy wise, still worth that keep there.
easily, yeah. No questions asked. He's a growing player. So you're gonna get some inconsistency out of younger players, but he'll be fine.
There you have it. So yeah, stay tuned next week for the Mahomes versus Jackson MVP Fantasy Football League on ESPN.com. I mean, we can kind of briefly touch on next week's matchups. We got 3-2 Breezy's Pieces going on the road to play no CMC. And then Viva La Porta Loca 3-2 going up against David. So Tad versus David next week. And then the No Chub Club, Evan against his cousin Sam. And then JJ's Gritty Glory against First Picks. So certainly a very intriguing line of matchups. Probably the most prominent one would have to be the one between David and Tad. Joe Burrow versus Kirk Cousins. So that'll be very interesting.
Should be fun.
There you have it. Week 5 of the Fantasy Blitz for the Mahomes versus Jackson for MVP Fantasy Football League. This has been Commissioner Will along with Commissioner Tad. Thank you guys so much for everything that you do within our league. Keep playing hard, and yeah, happy football season.